My son and his wife headed out for a cruise, leaving me to watch my grandson, Lucas. The boy is 8 years old and hadn't uttered a single syllable since the day he was born. But the second that front door clicked shut, the kid went stone still. He looked me dead in the eye and spoke in a voice as clear as a bell. "Grandpa, please. You can't drink that." Ice flooded my veins. Everything I thought I knew about my life turned to ash in a second. I used to be a warrior. I thought my fighting days were buried with my wife. I was wrong. I was heading back into the tall grass. Only this time, the mission was my own family. I need to know I'm not standing alone on this one. Drop a comment with your city and your country. I need to know this story is reaching people who understand that sometimes the person you trust most is the one holding the knife at 68. After 2 tours in Vietnam and burying my Mary for years back, I thought I knew what fear felt like. I was wrong. True terror is an 8-year-old boy breaking 8 years of silence to tell you your life is on a countdown. My son, Christopher, pulled into the driveway just after 9 a.m. His wife, Amber, stepped out, first blonde hair, perfect designer shades perched on her head like a crown. "Dad, thanks again," Christopher said, hauling the luggage. 4-day cruise for our anniversary. We need this. Lucas climbed out of the back. He's small for 8, clutching a stuffed elephant he's had since he was a toddler. The doctors called him nonverbal. They said he'd never speak. But when that boy looked at you with those deep brown eyes, I always felt like he was reading my soul. Inside the kitchen, Amber set a small box on the counter. "Harold, I prepped your special chamomile tea, the blend that helps with your sleep." "Trouble," I nodded, though I didn't remember ever telling her I couldn't sleep. "It's vital you drink it twice a day," she said, lining up the packets with surgical precision. "Morning and evening. Consistency is everything at your age." Something flickered in her eyes, something cold and quick. My old combat instincts, that sixth sense from the jungle, started screaming, but this was my daughter-in-law talking about tea. I choked the feeling down. "We gotta roll," Christopher said. He kissed Lucas on the forehead, but his eyes slid away. He couldn't even look at his own son. "Be good for Grandpa," Amber told Lucas. Her voice had the warmth of a refrigerator light. "Remember what we talked about." Lucas didn't move. He never did. I stood on the porch, Lucas's hand in mine, watching their car disappear down the street. It should have been a peaceful morning, but then Lucas's fingers clamped around my wrist. Hard, urgent. He dropped his elephant. He pointed, a shaking finger, toward the kitchen, toward that box of tea. "Lucas," I knelt down. "What is it, buddy?" His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. He looked like he was fighting back 8 years of dammed-up words. Then he broke the seal. "Grandpa," he whispered. His voice was rough, like an engine that hadn't turned over in years, but it was crystal clear. "Don't drink the tea. Mom put something bad in it." The world tilted. My knees hit the floor. I gripped his shoulders, staring at this child who had been a ghost in his own home. "Did you speak?" His small hands grabbed my shirt. The terror in his face was adult level, knowing, "Please, Grandpa, don't drink it." My grandson hadn't spoken since birth, and his first words just saved my life. I led him to the table, my hands shaking worse than his. I poured us water, real water. "Not the tea, Lucas. Never again. I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning." He looked down at his hands. "I was 5, he said. "At the doctor's office. I saw a toy I liked, and I said, 'Mama,' without thinking, just once. The doctor heard me. I stayed silent, my jaw tight. That night, Lucas's voice dropped to a whisper. Mom came into my room after Dad was asleep. She told me if I ever spoke again without her permission, she'd send me to a special hospital, a place where I'd never see you or Daddy again. She said, they give kids shots there that make them sleep forever. 5 years old, threatened with a needle and a permanent sleep for saying one word. I was so scared, Grandpa. So I just stopped. For everyone. How much do you understand? I asked, trying to keep the rage from shaking my voice. Everything, he said simply. I taught myself to read when I was 6, from the captions on the TV and the books you left out. People think because I don't talk, I don't hear. But I hear everything. What did you hear about the tea, Lucas? 6 months ago, Mom was on the phone. She was talking about medicine, about making you confused, making sure you wouldn't wake up. The kitchen felt like it was closing in. My daughter-in-law had been planning my exit for half a year. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She watches everything, Lucas said, his hands twisting together. Everywhere I go, every time you visit. This week was my only chance. When they left, when I knew she couldn't stop me. We had 4 days. 4 days before they came back and realized the observer had finally spoken. Grandpa, Lucas said, his voice turning dead serious. I didn't just hear things. I kept papers, evidence. I've been hiding them where Mom would never look. What kind of papers? Her research about medicine for old people. About making people look sick when they aren't. And ... about why she hates me, too. He led me upstairs past the family photos that now felt like lies. We went into his room, the one with the dinosaur wallpaper I'd put up. He knelt by the bed and pried up a floorboard. Mom thinks I'm empty-headed, Lucas whispered. She'd leave papers on her desk while she worked because she knew I couldn't tell. Once, she got an emergency call and left a yellow envelope. I took the important pages. She tore the house apart, looking for them. He pulled out a thin stack of papers, folded small. I took them, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was holding the blueprint for my own murder, curated by an 8-year-old spy. She even yelled at Dad for losing her documents, Lucas whispered. A mix of fear and a strange, newfound pride in his eyes. She never suspected me. She called me a broken decoration in this house. My hands weren't steady as I unfolded those papers. The first document was a printout from a medical site about elder neglect. Sections were highlighted in neon yellow: progressive memory loss, disorientation, changes in sleep patterns. Every symptom I'd been feeling for 2 years wasn't age, it was an agenda. The second document made my stomach turn. It was a list of medication interactions, covered in Amber's precise handwriting. Dosages, administration times, notes on how to space the pills so no doctor would catch the scent. But it was the third document that made my blood turn to ice. It was a timeline titled HB Timeline. My initials, my life reduced to a clinical trial. March 2024. Subject tired. Attributes to normal aging. September 2024. Added zolpidem. Desired confusion patterns achieved. I read that last line twice. Desired confusion patterns. She'd been tracking my decline like a science project, tweaking the poison until she got the results she wanted. Then I hit the final entry, dated just 4 days ago. Prepared concentrated doses for cruise week. Calculated amount should ensure permanent resolution within 48 to 72 hours. Permanent resolution. That's how she described killing me, like she was closing a business deal. Grandpa, Lucas said quietly, there's one more thing about why she hates me. He reached back into the floorboard and pulled out one last sheet, a DNA paternity test. Christopher Bennett, 0% probability of paternity. The room tilted. My son wasn't his father. I found it 2 years ago, Lucas whispered, tears finally tracking down his face. I'm not really your grandson, not by blood. That's why she calls me broken. I dropped the papers and pulled that boy into my arms so tight, he gasped. Stop, I said, my voice rougher than a gravel road. You listen to me, soldier. Blood doesn't make family. Honor makes family. Love makes family. I held him at arm's length so he could see I meant it. You are my grandson that will never change, ever. Lucas buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed. 8 years of fear and silence finally breaking. I held him, this brave kid who'd been running intelligence for both of us while I was 2, confused to see the enemy in my own kitchen. When he finally quieted, the fury in me started to burn white-hot. Amber thought she'd planned the perfect crime. She had no idea her victim had survived the jungles of Southeast Asia, and she definitely didn't know her broken decoration was a top-tier operative. This is war, I told him, spreading the documents across the table like battle maps. 3 phases: medical proof, documentation, and the trap. You ready? Lucas stood up straighter. Ready. At 3:15, I called an old friend, Dr. Mark Stevens. Mark, I need emergency blood work, today, no questions. By 4 o'clock, a nurse was in my house drawing vials. Mark stood in the doorway, concerned but loyal. Results by tomorrow morning, Harold. That evening, the phone rang at exactly 8 p.m. Predictable. Amber. I answered, letting my voice sound heavy and slow. Hello, Harold, dear. How are you feeling? How's Lucas? I let the silence stretch, acting like I was searching for the words. Lucas. Oh yes, good boy. So quiet. I couldn't find my wallet today, Amber. And I think I forgot to feed the boy lunch. Did I? Across the table, Lucas gave me a thumbs up. Oh my, Amber said, and I could hear the satisfaction she couldn't quite mask. That does sound concerning. We'll talk about options when we get back. Memory care facilities, professional help. Have you been drinking your tea? The tea, yes, makes me so tired, Amber. Is it supposed to do that? It's completely normal at your age, Harold. Get some rest. I hung up and dropped the act instantly. Lucas was staring at me, amazed. She totally bought it, he whispered. I can act confused for 2 days. Lucas, I've run ops with tighter timelines than this. I looked at the calendar. Thursday night, they'd be back Sunday. We had 48 hours to finish the cage. Friday morning, Dr. Stevens called. His voice was trembling. Harold, your blood is a cocktail of lorazepam, diphenhydramine, and zolpidem, all unprescribed. Another week of this and you'd have permanent brain damage, or you'd be dead. Hearing it from a doctor made it a different kind of real. I know who did it. Mark, give me 24 hours to handle this my way. Harold, call the police. 24 hours, Mark, not a minute more. At 11 a.m., I called my lawyer. Daniel, if I record a confession in Ohio without them knowing, is it legal? One-party consent, State Harold. As long as you're in the conversation, it's golden. Why? I'll need you here Sunday at 6 p.m. That afternoon, Lucas and I hit the electronics store. I bought a digital voice recorder, professional grade, small enough to hide behind the history books on my shelf. We tested it in the parking lot. Lucas stood 15 feet away and spoke soft. On the playback, every word was crystal clear. Friday night, we did the final briefing. The recorder would be live. Lucas would be on the floor, playing quietly, invisible, just like Amber expected. When she said enough to bury herself, he would stand up, grab the recorder, and speak. Lucas's hands twisted together. What if I can't do it? I covered his small hands with mine. "You've been brave for 8 years, soldier. I only need you to be brave for 5 more minutes. You're the secret weapon. You're the one who ends this. One more day," I whispered to the empty room. "That's all I'm asking for." Saturday was a grind. We ran the rehearsals until they were surgical. We checked the recorder's batteries, practiced the placement behind the books, and did full speed. Lucas was getting stronger with every word. "I can talk, Grandpa," he said, his voice ringing out. "I've always been able to. She just made me too scared to try." "Louder," I coached. "Look M in the eye. Every syllable is a bullet, Lucas. Make sure they hit the target." By evening, the boy couldn't even look at his dinner. Nerves were eating him alive. I sat him down and told him stories from the bush in '68 about men younger than Christopher, who found a brand of courage they didn't know they possessed. At bedtime, he looked up at me, small and pale. "Grandpa, what if everything goes wrong? Then we adapt, but it won't. We have the truth, and we have the receipts." I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, staring at Mary's photo, watching the clock tick toward the ambush. Sunday, 2 p.m. I heard the sedan pull into the driveway. That sound triggered something in me I hadn't felt in 50 years. The hyper-focused, icy calm right before the world goes loud. I looked at Lucas. His eyes were steady. He gave me a sharp nod, then dropped to the floor, surrounding himself with action figures. He went perfectly silent, fading back into the broken decoration Amber expected him to be. I slumped into my armchair, hair uncombed, shirt buttoned wrong, a day's worth of gray stubble on my face. When I looked in the mirror, I saw exactly what Amber wanted, a man whose mind was slipping through his fingers. The front door opened. "Harold, we're home." Amber's voice was bright and fake. She walked in, tanned from the sun, and her eyes swept over me. For a split second, I saw a flash of pure irritation. She was actually annoyed I was still sitting upright. Then the mask of concern slid on. "Oh, Harold, you poor thing. You look exhausted. Have you been taking care of yourself?" I let my eyes wander, acting like I couldn't quite find her face. "Amber, you're back. How long, how long was it?" "For days, Harold, just for days." "For days," I repeated, slurring just enough. "I've been so tired, I can't remember. Did I feed the boy today, or was that yesterday?" Christopher walked in behind her, hauling the bags. When he saw me, the color drained out of his face. "Dad, are you okay?" Amber shot him a look that could have cut glass. "He's just tired, Christopher. At his age, these things happen naturally." She sat on the couch, leaning back, smelling like success. "Harold, have you been taking your tea?" "The tea, yes, helps me sleep. I sleep so much now." I saw the satisfaction in her eyes. "That's good. Your body needs the rest." She turned to my son. "See, he's declining faster than we thought. We need to have the conversation." Christopher opened his mouth to protest, but she cut him off hard. "Christopher, your father needs professional help. A memory care facility. It's best for everyone." She turned back to me, and now the mask was off. The predator was out. "Harold, wouldn't it be nice to be in a place where people can watch over you? Where you don't have to worry about your affairs? The house, the finances. We can handle all those complicated things for you." Christopher shifted in the doorway. "Amber, maybe we should. Everything will be so much simpler once the arrangements are made," she whispered, almost to herself. She had no idea the recorder behind the books was catching every cold, calculated word. I sat there, playing the easy victim, letting her think. She'd already won the war. That's when Lucas stood up. He didn't walk to me, he walked to the shelf. He reached behind the history books, pulled out the digital recorder, and faced his mother. "This has been recording since you walked in," he said. His voice was steady. "It was steel, and I can talk. I have always been able to talk." The silence that followed was deafening. Amber's mouth hung open. "That's impossible. You're mute," the doctors said. "I stayed quiet because you said you'd hurt Grandpa if I spoke." Christopher stared at his son, trembling. "You can, ... You can really talk." I stood up, dropping the act instantly. I buttoned my shirt and looked Amber dead in the eye. "The boy's been able to speak his whole life, just like I've been completely lucid for 5 days." Amber stumbled back. You're not confused. Not even a little. Turns out, when you stop drinking drugged tea, your head clears right up." "I don't know what you think." "I don't think, Amber. I know." I pulled the manila folder from the side of my chair. "I have your documentation, your research, your drug schedules. I especially like the entry from October 10th, permanent resolution within 48 to 72 hours. That's how you talk about my death." Christopher's face went white. "Dad, no, ... She wouldn't. She's been poisoning me for 2 years, Christopher. Lorazepam zolpidem. Got the blood panel to prove it. And the recorder caught you admitting you wanted to handle my finances once I was gone." I reached back into the folder. "But you want the worst part. I found the DNA test. I know Lucas isn't Christopher's." Amber's face twisted into something monstrous. "That bastard ruined everything. I never wanted him. You were supposed to fade away quietly." The tea was working. She lunged toward Lucas, screaming, "If you had just stayed silent." I moved on pure instinct, stepping between them and catching her wrist in a grip she couldn't break. "Touch that boy. Let go. He's not even your real grandson. This boy has more honor in his pinky finger than you'll have in 10 lifetimes." I looked over my shoulder at Lucas. "Call 911, soldier. Attempted murder and elder abuse." Lucas ran for the phone. Christopher collapsed into a chair, buried his head in his hands. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know she would actually. I thought she was just talking." "You knew enough," I said, my voice cold. "You knew about the boy, and you knew she was doing something. You chose silence while she poisoned your father and muzzled your son. You're just as guilty." The sirens started in the distance. When Amber heard them, she stopped fighting. Lucas came back and gripped my shirt. We had survived the ambush. The police let her out in handcuffs. She was screaming that I was senile, that Lucas was crazy, but the officers wouldn't even look at her. They'd heard the tape. Christopher was taken in a separate car for questioning. His face was a mask of gray regret. I stood on the porch with Lucas, watching the red and blue lights fade into the night. The war was over. The healing was just beginning. The lesson is simple. Don't confuse silence with weakness, and never underestimate a man who has everything to lose. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for the people who matter most, leave a comment. Subscribe for more, because some stories need to be told to protect the next generation. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who stands beside you when the world goes dark. The detectives interviewed Lucas and me separately over the next 3 days. Lucas answered every question in that clear, steady voice of his. He laid it all out, the threats she made when he was 5, the 8 years of forced silence, the way he'd been gathering intelligence like a seasoned operative. The prosecutor brought in Dr. Emily Watson to evaluate him. Her report confirmed what I already knew. The boy had exceptionally high intelligence. She documented the forced silence as severe psychological abuse, but most importantly, She certified him as a world-class credible witness. Asterisk, when Dr. Mark Stevens took the stand, the room went cold. He testified that the levels of lorazepam and zolpidem in my system were high enough to put a horse down. Another week of that tea, and I was a dead man. My lawyer, Daniel Harper, presented the receipts, the recorded confession, the progress notes in Amber's handwriting, and the lab analysis of the tea packets. Amber's defense tried every trick in the book. They claimed I planted the evidence, that I coached the boy, that the recording was a fake. But they couldn't explain why her handwriting was all over those HB timeline notes. They couldn't explain her voice on that tape, cold as a winter morning, calculating my death. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The judge didn't blink as she sentenced Amber to 15 years for attempted murder, elder abuse, and child endangerment. Christopher got 5 years of probation. He cooperated, and he showed remorse, but the judge made it clear his silence had enabled 8 years of torture. The custody hearing was short. Christopher stood up and relinquished every right he had. Lucas deserves better, he told the court. My father has been more of a father to him than I ever was. A month later, I visited Christopher in jail. He looked 10 years older, the weight of his cowardice finally sinking in. How is he? He asked. He's talking non-stop, Christopher. He's thriving. His eyes filled with tears. Good. I was weak, Dad. I know that doesn't excuse it. No, I said, it doesn't. You let her muzzle that boy for 8 years. You let her poison me. You were a victim at first, but then you became an accomplice. I have to live with that, so do you. Can you tell him I love him? I looked at him through the glass. I'll tell him whether he forgives you is his call, not mine. I walked out and didn't look back. I haven't been back since. 6 months later, as spring turned into summer, Lucas and I had built a real family, not one bound by blood. On a Saturday in late April, we sat on the dock at the reservoir, fishing lines cast into the blue. My science presentation on sound waves got the highest grade in class. Lucas said, his voice animated and full of life. Mrs. Brooks said it was the best she's ever seen. I smiled, not surprised. Soldier, you're making up for lost time, Grandpa. His voice got soft. Do you ever think about my biological father? I didn't hesitate. No, because I'm looking at my grandson right now. But we don't share blood. We share something stronger, I told him. Blood is an accident of birth. Family is who you're willing to go to war for. We did that. That makes us family in the Lucas sense. Can I still be a Bennett? I turned to him fully. Son, you earned that name. You showed more courage than most men I served with in '68. You're a Bennett because you acted like one when it mattered most. His eyes brightened. I want to be like Dr. Watson when I grow up. I want to help kids who can't speak because they're too scared. My throat tightened. You'll do extraordinary things, Lucas. You understand the silence better than anyone. Just then, his rod jerked hard. I got something. We grabbed the rod together, working the line as the fish fought back. When that small bass broke the surface, twisting in the light, Lucas' laughter. We released the fish, watching it swim away into the deep. Grandpa, do you think Dad will ever visit? I don't know, Lucas. Your father is facing his own ghosts, but we're okay. We're better than okay. Yes, he said simply. We are. The Army taught me about duty. My son taught me about disappointment. But Lucas taught me the real meaning of family. It's not about DNA. It's about who stands beside you when the battle comes. Christopher sent a letter from jail last week. I haven't opened it. Maybe I will. Or maybe I'll let Lucas decide when he's older. For now, at 68, I've found my purpose again, not as a soldier, but as the guardian of a boy who found his voice and saved us both. Looking back, I want to tell you, don't ignore the warning signs. I almost missed them. I almost let a sweet smile lead me to my grave. If you sense something is wrong with a loved one, a quiet child, or an aging parent, don't wait for proof to fall in your lap. Investigate. Listen. Thank God Lucas had the courage to speak, and thank God I had enough left to hear him. Without that boy's bravery, I wouldn't be here to tell you this. The lesson: blood may connect you by accident, but love and honor connect you by choice. We fought for each other, and that makes us unbreakable. If you're out there protecting your family or raising a grandchild, know that you aren't alone. These stories save lives. Have you ever suspected something was wrong but stayed silent? What would you have done in my shoes? Comment below and share your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a grandpa story. Share this with someone who needs the strength to speak up. Stay vigilant, stay strong, and always choose love over silence.